and then are going to be approved.
That is working. So we would normally begin at 7. That's the prescribed time, but we do not yet have a quorum. We're expecting one additional member who is running behind to be here probably by around 7:15, 7:20. So please bear with us. We may have to get a bit of a late start here this evening. That's the most important.
All right.
Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Brittany, how are you? Good to see you.
All right, I'm going to give you a second there just to sit down. You're all good.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we now have a quorum, so we will call to order the Town of Farragut's June 2021 Visual Resources Review Board meeting. The first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes for our May 25th meeting, which was, as we all know, our first in-person meeting, but not at this location. So we're happy to be back at our normal meeting spot. So any discussion from the board related to the minutes from May 2021?
I liked it so much I went back. So sorry about that.
You just really
So I
like that location.
I just
There
really
you
like
go.
that location better.
There you go. All right, if there's no discussion, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve with Ms. Moore. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, a second by Mr. Wright. Should we continue doing verbal votes as we have in the past?
Up to you.
Why don't we go ahead and do the roll call vote? That way it's more clear that way.
Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
and Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay. So moving down to the first item on our agenda, which is under the ground-mounted sign application section, would be the Foxton Permanent Subdivision Entrance sign, the one that's on the Olympic Drive entrance. So with that, I'll turn it over to town staff.
Okay, we've got two requests from the Foxton Homeowners Association tonight. The first one is for the addition of a subdivision entrance sign along Olympic Drive. It's near, it's not right at the entrance to the subdivision, but it's close to it. And then the second item is almost identical off another street. And we'll get to that as on the next agenda item. But they're proposing to put in a a small monument sign with just Fox Den on it. It will match the stonework and the look of it will match their main entrance off Kingston Pike. I'm sure y'all are familiar with that. Here's basically what it'll look like. It's part of a street improvement program that they have. You know, they make improvements within their subdivision on an ongoing basis, the HOA dues, and make improvements. This is fairly odd because let me jump here, it's actually in the road right away. So under our sign regulations, they can do that, but it requires some extra hoops to jump through. So it has to be reviewed by both the Planning Commission, this board, the Visual Resources Review Board, and then it will actually have to go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for permission to use the road right away. So, you know, this is an older subdivision. They don't have easements platted to put them up on that, you know, up by, you know, the intersection of Olympic and Smith there. You know, they don't have a lot of open space that's controlled by the homeowners association, so they're requesting, you know, permission from the town to actually locate it in the road right away. In this case, there are some little loop streets and islands that were platted into the original subdivision, and so they're proposing to put it in one of those where they already have landscaping. So you can see on the map here where it would be relative to the entrance to the subdivision. It's a short distance. It would be very visible. Here's the landscaping plan that goes along with it, and here's a Photoshop image of approximately what they want to do. You know, one concern of staff and part of our recommendation is that they, you know, would need to work with an arborist to make sure they don't do any damage to that tree when they put it in. It's a nice, well-established tree in that island, but that's what they're requesting. The Planning Commission reviewed it last Thursday and approved it and made a recommendation on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for approval of the streetscaping plan, you know, which is part of this overall, you know, provision in the sign regulations that it is allowed on the right of way if it's part of a broader streetscaping, street improvement type program plan. And then, like I said, it needs to be reviewed by multiple boards, you know, before it's approvable. But, you know, from your standpoint, you're both making a recommendation onto the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, you know, for the use of the right of way, but then also are doing your standard review for the, you know, for the sign, you know, as you would any other ground-mounted sign for, you know, for a subdivision entrance like this.
Okay. Does that mean we need to have two separate votes?
I think you could do it as part of one motion to, you know, to both approve the sign and recommend it on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for approval.
Okay. Recommending, of course, the right-of-way usage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the streetscaping plan, just, you know, I mean, you know, that's what it's part of here is a streetscaping plan, the signage, and that goes along with the right-of-way usage.
Okay. All right. Questions, comments for staff? Alderman Pinchot?
Yeah, first on, can you go back a slide or two? The foliage, the landscape plants and so forth, where is that? Is there a previous plan showing exactly what they're putting around that?
Yeah, it's here.
That one, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a mix of azaleas and hostas.
Okay, are we in agreement with all that as far as height and whether or not there won't be any issues?
It meets the minimum requirements for how many. You know, they'll you know, one of the things that they'll have to do as part of using the right of way is they'll have to put in place a maintenance agreement with the town.
Which means the town's responsible.
Well, no, I mean, you know, the town will probably ask, you know, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen will want to have a maintenance, you know, some sort of agreement in place
That they're gonna maintain
responsible
it,
to maintain
even
it.
though it's right away.
And also liability if someone ran a car into it or something like that.
Okay.
So, you know, but that'll be, you know, in agreement between the board of Mayor and Aldermen and the HOA for that, you know, that sort of thing, because the board controls the right of way.
So does that need to be a subject to?
I believe I have it written up that, that needs to be done. You can make that a subject to if you want, but that's something that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen will be probably requiring of them. The Planning Commission, made that recommendation that it got, that it be done with some sort of maintenance and liability agreement being put in place, and also the arborist concern as well, to make sure that that tree's not damaged.
I think commercially it needs to be a subject to. I don't see it written in here that, the way I read this, item,
I think right here is what he's talking about.
that's what he's referring to?
Yeah, but, if you want to list it as a subject to, that's fine.
I think it should be a subject to myself. What do you think?
It's going to be a commitment that has to be made
Yeah.
by the town. It should be a subject to for our board and all the others at the same time, I would
Yeah,
think.
but I mean, ultimately, it's up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to put that sort of,
So we would then,
Maintenance
so
and-
instead of a
You're-
subject to from us, it's a recommendation.
it's a recommendation, I think.
Okay.
Because, again, if you want to do this as two motions, you certainly can. One is you're approving the sign under the sign regulations in terms of, the normal review. And the other is that, you're making a recommendation onto the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for approval of the streetscaping plan and the use of the right-of-way.
See,
And so.
I think that's two different. I think that's two different.
I agree. I think
So-
it should be two different votes.
If you want to do it as two different, and then put the subject tos in
On
the
the left.
appropriate
Yes,
motion, that's fine as well.
Okay,
that's my recommendation.
I
I'd like to hear
agree.
from the rest of the board.
I agree. Okay. Ms. Moore, do you have questions, comments?
I would agree that it should be two as well, just because of the complexity of forwarding it and making the clarification. I think on the landscaping, just in addition to the maintenance agreement, I think azaleas, this whole sign is supposed to be 3 feet tall. I think azaleas themselves can get to be roughly 2 to 3 feet tall. And if azaleas are in front of the sign, it's going to cover Foxton. So I think, like we've said in some other signs, and especially this one because of where it's located, being very mindful of where they place those plants and maybe using some that are shorter varieties than azaleas. Maybe on the backside they could put those azaleas, and even maybe the hostas more in the front because they'll stay smaller. But yeah, I think those azaleas, I didn't notice from the drawing that those would be azaleas, but when I read it, those are going to get bigger than the sign. So I would just recommend maybe some different plants there than azaleas. And other than that, I think the sign looks good and I like the way they look.
Okay, Mr. Wright.
I guess along with echoing some comments, just, I was going to ask a little bit about the positioning of it and the benefit there, but I think that side of the neighborhood does need something. I think it'd be great. I've thought that for years. It'd be nice to have something on that side. It's unfortunate this can't be closer to Smith Road. But otherwise, I agree with the comments. The sign looks good. So if this is the best place for it, then I don't have any other comments or anything to add to it. But I agree with Ron and everyone else that two motions is fine, and that seems to make a lot of sense.
All right, one other comment. In looking at this picture and then looking at the one maybe right before this, the drawing, maybe it's the one after that, the one that shows the placement there.
This one?
No, that one. So the tree, I mean, it looks like it's in a different place here than it does in the picture. Is the sign in front of the tree or beside the tree?
There's someone here from the HOA that you can ask. I think that was photoshopped in, so, it may not be exact as to.
But I do think in that diagram you're talking about, it is pretty far back from where that sign's going to be. So that scale's not really
Yeah.
accurate to the picture that you're seeing, the real life picture.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's some drainage that comes in, like across Olympic well, also that they're going to have to deal with it in there. So they'll have to work with the town to get it positioned right.
Okay.
That
All
sign's
right.
gonna be right up against the tree is what, realistically.
It says that it's go back to that. It says it's 7 feet from the tree. Is that?
Not in the picture. I mean.
This
not
one does.
In the Photoshop picture, it certainly
But
looks
this-
closer than that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but it says here it's 7 feet away.
It's hard to see that.
Seems to be some confusion.
I see
here,
what you're
so-
saying, yeah, but it seems hard to fit it in that dimension.
All right, so there's someone here representing Foxton.
You wanna
If you don't mind, if you'll come to the podium. You would just state your name and your address and.
Okay. I'm Joe Mathern, 217 St. Andrews Drive.
Great. Well, I think you've heard our conversation about the placement of the sign versus the tree.
Right.
Can you shed some light on to all of
Sure.
that?
The, actually, what you're looking at there is the more accurate of the two. I recognize there's perhaps some disagreement between the artist's rendering and this drawing, but that drawing actually reflects the actual dimensions there on the island. I want to point out the note down at the bottom left there that we're going to adjust the sign and the landscaping as needed in the field to avoid any underground interferences. So it could likely end up moving, I would think, maybe somewhat to the west in order to avoid that underground drainage line that was mentioned earlier, which, as far as I can tell, goes to the east of the tree. But we've got enough room there to play around with to get it positioned correctly.
You're aware of what our requirements are from distance from the curb?
Yes,
Okay, and you can work with that?
yeah. Well, it's going to end up being probably about 6 feet from the curb.
Does that work?
From the standpoint of a subdivision entrance sign, and plus, in this case, like I said, it is on the right-of-way, so they're going to have to work with the town to get it in an acceptable location.
So the sign itself, when you're looking at the through street that goes through there, the through street is at the bottom of this page, is that correct?
No.
You mean
at the top of the page?
Smith Road?
No, the other street, the Olympic.
Olympic.
Isn't that the
I'm
one?
sorry,
is
yeah.
the-
It's on the north side.
Olympic, yeah, goes to,
Olympic's on
yeah,
the north
that goes
side.
to the north.
So
Yes.
the sign
Essentially
will be-
where Olympic Drive, where the title of the sheet is.
Okay, so the sign will be in front of the tree.
Yes, sir.
Go to the next slide. I think it shows the roads. So
Yeah.
that tree is below the sign on that drawing.
Yeah,
That's what okay.
yeah. Yeah, the tree is further back into the island than
Okay.
where that red spot is there on the
So it's not
drawing.
going to be like we saw in the other picture, which I think you said was the artist rendering.
Yeah.
Which made it look like it was really right beside it.
Yeah,
No, it's not
So-
going to be that close.
Okay,
Good.
all right. So it's going to be in a good spot, really. If the tree's pushed back, it'll be out where you would see it driving through.
Right. That's our plan.
Okay. One of the other concerns that I heard was about the height of the landscaping around it. Have you had any comments to that?
Yeah, in fact, if you have some suggestions on some alternate landscaping to locate there in front so that it'll stay shorter than than the lettering on the sign, yeah, we would welcome that.
yeah, we can provide you with something.
Okay.
They know what's approved in the town, so.
We were thinking in terms of something that would get maybe no more than 18 inches tall, something like that. If there's not a variety of azaleas that'll do that, well then, yeah, we need to consider something different. I agree.
Even if you could put them on the ends, sometimes it works where it's not right in front of the sign, even on the ends. We've
Yeah.
suggested that, so I like azaleas, just don't want it to block it.
Right, we agree. Actually, I have a question, if that's all right.
Sure.
You've mentioned, and we certainly agree, that we should be engaging an arborist to help us with this. Do you have a suggestion for one that we might consider?
We typically don't recommend like professionals that way because it's it's not fair really to them. But,
Okay.
We could probably throw out, 3 or 4 names, and then you could pick from one.
That would be helpful,
thing.
yeah. We have a couple in mind ourselves, but of course, we're not familiar with all those who are in the business, and so
Yeah.
that would be helpful. Yeah, because we certainly value that tree and would not want to do anything that would compromise it, so
Okay.
we're totally on board there.
All right. Any other comments about the sign here on Olympic Drive that would help us?
The other question that I would have is the board, this is the HOA board, would like to consider anyway, perhaps installing a slightly larger sign on this Olympic Drive island, considering that it's the bigger of the 2 islands that we're dealing with, and proportionally it might be able to handle a sign that's a little bit bigger. So we're thinking perhaps of something as big as 4 feet tall and 5 feet wide. Again,
Well,
That's-
this sign is what's in front of us tonight.
understood.
So I don't know how that would work. He would have to submit all new information to change the dimensions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Is there a rush on having this approved tonight, or could it wait to come back with another plan if you so choose to?
Perhaps, yeah. Like I said, the board is still wanting to consider that, but it may not end up getting past the cost phase anyway, so I just thought I'd ask.
If that was the case, what I might suggest is that you go ahead and make a recommendation to the the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on the streetscape plan and on the use of the right of way, so they can take some action and let the HOA know whether or not they're even going to approve the use of the right of way, and then if they needed to come back and amend their plan, in terms of the actual dimensions of this particular sign, they could do that.
Then they can make adjustments to whatever plans they want to and show us
Yeah.
that as well.
Would it be okay to go ahead and approve this as submitted, and then if we decide that we do want to do something different, obviously we'd have to come back? That way
Yes,
that,
I mean, this is submitted.
okay,
So
all right,
we can do that.
thank you. Yeah, I think that's probably the best approach, because like I said, I don't know that the board, once they see the cost of the larger sign, they're going to want to do it anyway, so.
Well, there are maximums on the height and so forth, so you need to make sure you're within those guidelines if you do decide you want to go with a
Right.
larger one.
Right.
Yeah, they're, I think they would have room for that, but we would check it.
So, one couple last questions. Any lighting on this sign, or is there any plan for lighting?
At this point, we're, again, considering perhaps adding some solar lighting. The base plan does not include it.
That would be something else that would have to be approved.
Okay,
So if that's something you want to add, that's another consideration as to what you would want to do with this sign tonight versus, later
Let me
on.
ask you just a question of distinction. Is a lighting within the sign or to project onto the sign?
It can be either way.
we would consider projecting onto the sign.
So nothing backlit within, okay.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, but either way, it would still have to be something he would have to submit for,
okay.
approval.
Yeah, understood. It's submitted without lighting.
Right.
I agree.
Right. So no lighting is planned at this point with what you have submitted to us.
Right.
And then one last question about the material, which I may have seen and forgotten, but what is the material of the sign?
Natural stone.
Okay. All right. And there's not really anything to match that to, like we normally match to a building or whatever else, so
No.
it's just whatever they would like, so.
We're going after matching what's at the front entrance.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Any other comments?
No, thanks.
Okay. Sounds like we're at the point of voting then, so we're going to, again,
You need
hold
a motion.
two separate votes. So the first motion will be I guess what you're calling the streetscaping plan and the right-of-way and the maintenance agreement and all the things that we're going to be pushing on as a recommendation. So do we have a motion for that portion of this application?
I'll make a motion to to approve as submitted.
The streetscaping
Right.
plan right away. All right.
Sorry.
We have a motion by Mr. Wright, a second by Alderman Pinchot. So we'll have a roll call vote on that.
Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
and Mr. Wright.
Yes.
All right, so the second item then will be the actual sign itself, so we need a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve as submitted. The sign.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the sign. We have a second.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Moore, second by Alderman Pinchot. Roll call vote, please.
Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
and Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Okay, both motions passed.
All right, so now we'll move down to the next item on our agenda, which is also a Foxed In permanent subdivision interest sign, this time on the St. Andrews Drive entrance. So,
It's basically a mirror request just for another street entrance to the subdivision. It's essentially the same sign, same situation, just a different island. Not quite as large a tree nearby, but still a couple trees in that island. You can see here sort of a Photoshop. And here's a landscaping plan, again, pretty much identical. And here's the location that would be off of Everett and St. Andrews.
so otherwise, this is pretty much the same as
Yeah,
the previous sign.
they're virtually identical, just two different locations.
Okay. Any questions for staff on that? We'll start there again for staff on that. Mr. Wright, do you have any questions for staff on this one?
I do not.
Ms. Moore?
I do not.
Alderman Pinchot?
I have none.
All right. Anything to add to us on this side?
No, this is essentially a carbon copy of the one on Olympic.
All right. So everything that we're just basically duplicating what we've done for the previous. So again, 2 votes. We'll start off again with the streetscaping plan right away recommendation. So do we have a motion?
Question.
Oh, sorry.
Maintenance agreement should be included in that.
Yeah, yep.
For
Got
3
that
things.
down. Yep.
Okay.
Streetscaping plan right away maintenance agreement. If I left that out. So do we have a motion for that?
I'll move. So move.
We have a motion by Alderman Pinchot. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Moore. So roll call vote, please.
Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Pinchot,
Yes.
and Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You still need a motion now to approve this actual sign.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Thank you, both. Jeez, here. I was
To
ready to
approve
move
the sign
on.
as submitted. There you
All right, we
go.
got a motion by Mr. Wright. Do we have
I'll
a second?
second.
We got a motion, a second by Alderman Pinchot, and thanks for keeping us straight. And roll call vote, please.
Okay, Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
and Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Okay.
Now you're finished. Thank you. All right, so we're moving on down to the next item on the ground mounted sign agenda, which is the Blockbuster Property Shopping Center ground sign at 11135 Kingston Pike.
Okay, we looked at this one either last month or the month before. It was tabled because there were some issues with some conflicts with an earlier plan that y'all had reviewed for landscaping on the site. And there were some plan elements on the actual sign that were deficient. So they've resubmitted now. They also withdrew the previously reviewed and approved landscape plan for the entire site. That larger landscaping plan was reviewed, I think, back in November or December. It was approved subject to some clarifications or corrections. What they did to avoid confusion is they just went ahead and withdrew that. So what they're doing now is just the sign and just the landscaping around the sign. And when they decide what they want to do with tree removal and landscaping on the rest of the site, they'll resubmit a new landscaping plan, because it doesn't sound like they're going to follow through with their original landscaping proposal. So,
Okay.
so so now that conflict that existed, the last time we looked at this is gone in terms of the landscaping that this plan is showing that's relative to the sign. They've also made corrections to the actual sign plan. They have the 2-foot base that's required underneath it. They meet all the other parameters in terms of the area of the sign relative to the setback and those type of issues. Really, the issue the board needs to determine tonight is the color scheme of the sign. They've got 2 proposals. Again, staff asked them, like we did last month, another applicant, to have a proposal with a light background and darker lettering, and the reverse, a darker background with a lighter lettering. The lettering doesn't show light there, but if you read the plan, they're proposing beige to match the darker beige on the building for the background, and then ivory letters, ivory colored lettering for contrast, or a lighter color to match the lighter stucco on the building with dark letters. So, again, it comes back to our discussion last month regarding the town's architectural design standards and some of the balance that this board has to do between, some of the guidance in that, but at the same time trying to be consistent with the building and compatible with the building. So I think you're all familiar with this site. It's an older building. It's a combination of various tones of stucco. There's some very light, and then there's two different tones of beige, and then the green roof. So and some light colored brick. So it's really in terms of the sign plan, their setback is shown here. Their landscaping is shown here in the top right-hand corner there. It's all compliant in terms of the amount of landscaping they're showing, what they're doing there. The sign meets all the size requirements and parameters for the 15-foot setback that they're showing. So, the real issue here from staff's perspective is the board's opinion and decision on which color scheme to go with, and then just approving the overall sign where it is and all.
Okay. Did the applicant express a preference?
Their original design that they submitted was the light background with the dark lettering. And then I asked the designer to go ahead and come up with an alternative, just so you would have both to look at. So I didn't ask them which they preferred. They didn't really, they didn't appear to have a strong opinion when I asked them. They were like, yeah, fine, we can do that, no problem. But their first submission was the lighter background with the darker lettering.
Mm-hmm. It's somewhat hard to tell from what they've submitted what it's really going to look like.
And that building is a tough one to match.
Right.
It's not as clear cut as a nice brick building or a building that's got some very strong colors on it. It's fairly muted in its existing coloring, so it's a tough call on this one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, questions for Bart, Ms. Moore.
On the lettering on the darker background,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't say if it's outlined or not, but the image looks like it's outlined, even on like the printed version that I printed out. The top one on the printed version doesn't look outlined. If the light or the ivory lettering is outlined in black?
I don't. I mean, if that was something you thought would look good, you could certainly, recommend it that way. But they just have it listed as ivory lettering for contrast against the beige background. and on the top drawing, they have it listed as dark lettering on the lighter background.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to tell on, both in terms of the colors that, the way they show up in their programs they use to do the artwork, and then projected on the computer and on the screen. It's sometimes difficult to tell.
It is. And then just to clarify, the darker background is what the architectural guidelines are recommending?
Yeah, I mean, if given all the other guidance in terms of, I'm looking for compatibility with the building and having signs that, don't clash with the building and that sort of thing. If, all things being equal, there's a preference there for a darker background, lighter lettering. But again, as you saw last meeting, there was a, preference for, the lighter background with the dark lettering, the way it would look with the building that, that the sign last month was going with. And again, here, it's really I think this one is a tougher decision than that one.
I think, this color doesn't look very dark, and I think
Yeah,
the black outline that is showing here makes it really difficult to read, but I think a light lettering
yeah.
without even a black outline, knowing how small those individual signs are, would make it
Yeah.
almost impossible with as much traffic and with all the other landscaping and all the other signs and businesses that are right there. For me, the white background, the black lettering, and because the building is so light in color, the majority of the building is light colored versus just the accents and the darker pieces. And there is some green accents on the sign. I think just for legibility, the light background in this instance does look better. That darker background, I like the color of it. I think it looks nicer, but I think it's harder to read personally.
When you zoom in on the image and on the computer, that what appears to be a dark border kind of disappears, and it's truly just light. It's ivory on beige, and it does wash a bit. But again, that's zoomed in on the computer, so I don't know exactly how that would look in the real world. It's difficult to tell.
What about dark lettering on the beige?
That's something you could ask them to look at.
If we like that, because I agree with you, Brittany, that the light with the dark lettering, I think the dark lettering needs to be, that needs to be on there. But I agree the beige for the tan color is probably better. What about dark lettering on there?
Is there something in the guidelines about it has to have lighter lettering on the darker background?
It does call for that, but again,
Is that a darker background? Is that dark? Is that background considered dark? It's darker than white.
Yeah, it does call for light lettering on dark backgrounds, but again, that's
That dark.
that's for contrast and visibility, and in this case, that may not work because of the coloring on the building.
Right.
So, that's something that y'all can weigh and can ask them to look at, certainly, because I think in the architectural standards, it's calling for truly dark backgrounds, dark blues, dark reds, dark,
Right.
in which case then you get a lot more contrast when you have a light letter.
Right.
But in this case, there's no color on the building that would match with a truly dark background, so they're sort of caught in between on that.
Mm-hmm. I think in that case, I'm fine with either background, but I like the black lettering since it is not a true dark background. I would be okay with either one that they prefer as long as it's the dark, bolder lettering, in my opinion.
Okay.
So that's my comments.
Okay.
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Thanks.
Alderman Pinchot.
Their recommendation, you said, was the top one, right? The white background with the,
That was their
Black.
first submittal.
That's what?
That was their initial submittal.
right. I agree with what Brittany's been saying about the, if those colors on the bottom picture are white on beige, it's not going to work. If it were black on beige, it might. but, or it would, but I have no problem with the top picture there with the black letters on the white background. That would, to me, that makes more sense, but again, we're going against our,
Well, yeah, but, as was discussed at the last meeting, there's more factors in the architectural standards than just that one statement. And so, you do have to consider, the other guidance in terms of, being complementary to the building and compatible with the building. And also, the sign ordinance, looks for legibility in the sign. So if you're going to have lettering washing out, that kind of conflicts with that as well. So that, this is a difficult one to deal with because of the existing color scheme on the building.
I just want to see some color. If that green outline, I don't know how big, how wide those green strips between the actual tenant signs are going to be, but I think it needs to have some color. And if that were a little bit bigger, I don't want to take away from the sign.
Right.
Well, I was even thinking that top panel where their number and the addresses could be maybe that beige with black lettering, and then the panel, like the tenant panels, could be white and stand out, just to add a little bit. I don't know what that would look like, but just to add some color. I'm with you. It maybe
I
needs
actually asked
something.
them to look at putting green on the top part to match the roof.
All
but-
green?
Yeah.
Well, just on the top, on the address thing with,
White lettering.
with white lettering, but, they said it just got really busy. And, the design people working on this said that it didn't look right, so.
The brick of the sign will be the white to match the brick on the post, right, of
Yep.
the building?
Yep,
So one thing to consider is the top one will be a lot of white,
yeah.
right? White brick, white background, dark lettering. Still may work. There will be a whole lot of white without a lot of contrast. But then again, the brick needs to be white to match the building.
Right.
That's
It's
right,
part of the sign ordinance,
yeah.
so. Can you show us again what the height is of this sign? It's very difficult to read.
Read on that,
Looks like it's
yeah.
8 feet. Am I reading that right?
Can't really, there's a little zoom in thing here.
8 feet something.
It is.
I think it's just 8 feet.
At the base.
Can you read it on there now? So it's 6,
Plus 1.5.
well, it's a little odd because part of that 6'8" or
Oh,
six
6 foot
measurement there is part of the address area, but
Right.
they meet the ordinance. It's compliant.
Will this sign be a little taller? I can't remember if there's a drop off there because where you go into that parking lot, will it be a little taller to meet road grade?
They've not asked for that. They could,
Okay.
but they've not asked for that. This is what they're proposing.
So I guess what I was getting at is, and I don't know, but the retail centers that would be at the bottom, 4 and 7, will they be obstructed by the road grade out there? Do you have any idea? Because I think it goes down a little bit, doesn't it?
It does drop down a little bit, yeah.
So-
Down into there, you
Right.
go down a bit of a grade,
So whether you can see those or not, I don't know.
yeah.
Okay. And what was the landscaping that's going around it?
In there, again,
But the landscaping will be on the ends. Is that the way they have it drawn up there?
they have a mix there. They're putting in one Winter King hawthorn, then they've got some juniper and some Indian hawthorn around the base in terms of shrubs, and then just some perennials
But
and grasses.
if
put
you
in.
scroll up there, I think they're putting it at the end of the sign, right on each end, not
Yeah.
in front of the sign itself.
They have Liriope in front of it.
There it is, blown up a little bit. So they've got the shrubs on either end, the tree behind, and then some ground cover in front.
Okay. So it should not grow up in the long part of the sign or whatever that would obstruct.
And
We
again,
hope.
this sign's compliant in that it does have a full 2-foot base
All right.
under it. So they've got that to work with as well.
Okay. And there is no one here representing them tonight?
Nope.
Okay. Any other discussion from the board? So I guess we need a motion, and in that motion, we need to select between option 1, which is the light background, dark lettering, or option 2, which is the, darker background, lighter lettering, even though it doesn't really show quite that way on what we're seeing here.
And also on, as part of my recommendation that, a survey be required to ensure that they are compliant with the setback. They're going to be right at a 15-foot setback, so.
All right, so subject to the required survey.
Yeah.
If we like the idea of option 2, but with black lettering, that has to be a recommendation, and we would not vote to approve one of these two, is that?
I think you could, if you prefer the beige background, you could, vote to approve that and then, ask them to look at putting dark lettering on it.
But I wouldn't approve the beige with the white lettering,
I see.
is what I mean.
Why couldn't we make the motion beige with black lettering? I'm just asking a question.
Or approve either one with black lettering and see which one would work better,
That's fair. But, I mean,
Well, I mean, under the circumstances, this is a building with a lot more white
yeah,
than beige.
Yeah.
Best I remember.
Yeah,
So
the beige is really just trim work.
So it's kind of more appropriate as, one of the regulations to match the building. I think the white matches more appropriately in this case. But as you said earlier, it's a hard decision. I mean, either one of them works.
I think like you said, though, a few minutes ago, there's a lot of white up there. The brick has to be white, which is fine, looks good. I think that one below looks good, but with dark lettering.
Mm-hmm. It's agreed. It's a tough decision because there's a part of me that says with all the white on the brick and then all the white in the sign,
Mhm.
that's a whole lot of white
Mhm.
without any contrast.
I think too, though, I mean, if you have a retailer go in, we know that they may have like a splash of color in I mean, mostly black, but maybe a little bit of color here or there. If you have a beige background with all black lettering and maybe
I'm going to try
an A in the beginning of it that's, a little bit of outline that's red or whatever, it may blend in a little bit more.
I'm going to try to zoom in on these a little bit and see if that
So
helps you.
I just wonder, does
your
white
screens?
allow for a little bit more customization where the beige background will make it be all black? And does it kind of block them into a certain look versus a little bit more flexibility where we've seen on white backgrounds? Just throwing that out there. I don't have I would maybe say either one with black lettering would be my preference, but.
Okay, well,
It's a hard one.
a hard one. But now we're at the point of trying to make a decision. So do I have a motion on one of these two signs with the subject twos, as we've mentioned a second ago?
To go with the top sign with the white background, black letters.
And the subject two, the survey.
Subject to, yes.
All right, so we have a motion on the table now for option 1 with the white background with black lettering and the subject to for the survey. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, so the first by Alderman Pinchot, second by Ms. Moore. Please do a roll call vote.
Okay. Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
and Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Okay. That passed.
Okay. So So the next item on our agenda is the landscape plan applications. This is for the new Farragut Town Center at Biddle Farms Development. The first phase landscaping is a property located right off of Kingston Pike and Brooklawn Street. So
Okay, this is the first phase of the landscaping for a much larger project, and they need to move forward on some elements of the project. It's going to be like phase development just because of the size of it. I don't know how many of you have been following the news and the Planning Commission actions on the larger development, but they did need to get some landscaping plans in place for grading permits and be able to move forward with elements of the project. So this first phase of the landscape plan is really tied to the Aldi grocery store that's going in, and then also the detention basins. So, and because it's such a large project, there's going to be some carryover onto other parts. Like they couldn't actually get all the shade trees needed right clustered around this area for the amount of improvement they're showing in this one phase, because there's actually going to be future development within even the area they're showing. So, what they did is they, put a note on it that a few trees are going to be located elsewhere in the development, which is fine. This is being done as a planned commercial development under the zoning ordinance. So, here's the section around Aldi. The store there is the main. You can see that there are a couple areas in here that are going to be, eventually have buildings in them, like up in this area. Well, it's not. Let me go back.
Where does Aldi, where will it face? Is it?
Bottom left corner.
Yeah. Here's the Aldi store here.
Right, I'm saying,
And
will it
Kingston Pike.
face Kroger?
Yes, facing Kroger.
Okay.
No, yeah, it's, yeah,
Two entrances?
it's a corner entrance.
Oh.
So.
Okay. Where that
Here-
little door sticking out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so this is the Aldi section of the plan, and the parking, the loading docks, and some of the entranceways that go along with that. But as part of this, they're also putting the street in off of Kingston Pike. That comes in. It's going to be like the main boulevard into the development. They're not proposing the landscaping for that area now because it's going to be under construction, and there's no reason to put landscaping in and then have to tear it out. Same as like this area is going to be a building pad area, so there will be one or two buildings in here, and the same thing goes for this area as well. So there was no reason for them to be landscaping that, only to have to take it out in the future.
Those two buildings he just circled, there's a spread between them so that people on Kingston Pike can look down through there and see the front of Aldi's.
Right.
So that's the landscaping for that section. And as I said, there's a note up here in the table that addresses the fact that there may be some trees that carry over into the larger development. And then here's the landscaping for the detention basins. Now, these are the detention basins for the entire development, and they are located elsewhere on the site. And the applicant did submit a larger plan here, so you can kind of see the overall landscaping, the way it'll ultimately be, where the bulk of the trees will be located, and then where the detention basins are. So really the Aldi area that you were looking at is just, well, let me try that again. Sort of just this parking lot and over into the Aldi. And then, of course, these 2 detention basins back here. So that's the first phase of the landscaping plan that they're asking you to approve tonight. And it'll be part of the larger, and I'm not sure how subsequent phases of the landscaping plan will come in. The apartments might come in separate from the commercial. Some additional elements of the commercial could come in. It just depends on, I guess, how the project proceeds and what they need to go to keep, to submit to keep the project moving forward. In terms of the plan, they've made all the corrections that staff had asked them to make. They turned in a corrected plan the latter part of last week. I wanted to double check it again, so I sent out the recommendation the way I did, but it's compliant the way it's turned in. It's approvable. The only one thing that I noticed, and the designers here, if you have any questions for her, is these building dimensions, the 203, it's actually, they're a little confusing because the 203 is the opposite longer wall. So if you could just, yeah. But I mean, apart from that, I was just, when I was taking some measurements on tree separation and making sure that all the parking was within the right distance of the trees, it wasn't adding up to me when I was scaling on it, and I said, oh, but then I realized that this, the 20379 listed on that wall is actually, I think, the longer wall on the other side of the building.
Annette Hummel, Site Incorporated, 10215 Technology Drive, Suite 304, Knoxville, Tennessee. This is the way Mark always had me do it,
Okay,
because the dock wall,
I see. I see what you did.
I included that, because
Okay.
it does face the road.
Okay,
I-
that's fine. I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I just took the longest dimension in either direction.
okay. Yeah, I was looking at it today, and I was just comparing distances, and something didn't add up. but
Yeah.
Then I figured out what it was, so, okay.
All right, so I don't know if you reached the point of your recommendation or staff recommendation yet.
Staff can recommend approval of the plan as submitted.
Okay. Just, if you'll go back to the previous page, just to make sure I get my bearings on everything. So you were talking about the road that is going to be the main entrance in up there. Is that this existing entrance now, the ones that's at the traffic light coming down
Yeah.
from Farragut High School? It'll just be redesigned.
Yeah, it's going to be a boulevard. It'll be lined with commercial
Okay.
structures, and angled parking through there. And then it comes down and it branches out. There's a mix in here. There's, going to be a backbone of public streets. And then those are going to lead into the parking areas that are going to have internal circulation themselves, but it'll be, that circulation will be through the parking lots and through private elements of the development.
Okay.
But,
So the Aldi building itself will be a new building,
yeah,
and the existing building goes away that's there?
yeah.
Is it where the existing building would have been,
Part of it. I think part of it.
part of it?
Yeah, I think
Or is
Annette
it-
can probably better describe that, but,
Yeah, maybe part of it.
Well, yeah, not the entire, because that's a
Yeah.
long
It's just that
building,
edge
but
of Kroger,
Yeah.
little
it's
Kroger
that
thing.
end.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be-
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll still be driving in from this, I don't know, entrance that's over here. I'm just trying to figure out which entrance takes you in there that's on Brooklawn right now.
Well, there's a couple of entrances.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's this.
Call it
this
the
is an
firehouse
ex-
entrance
yeah.
and then the vet entrance, I guess, right?
This is an existing entrance here. God. Okay, I'm really hating this.
Behind the restaurant.
Yeah, that exists now.
It's going away,
Gone,
the restaurant.
gone.
So there's an entrance
Well,
here that already exists. And then there's going to be a new public street that runs across here that'll then branch off into the common, the sort of great lawn that's going to be part of the development. And then, of course, the main entrance off Kingston Pike as well will come in here, and it continues down. And so let me erase all that, and might be able to see it better on this larger development area. Like you've got the Aldi's right in here. Yeah, so this is going to be a main street into the development.
And that's the high school.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, right across from
Okay.
there. Here's Brook Lawn and Kingston Pike,
Right.
right? So there's a small entrance into the parking lot. This will be a public street that'll come in here, and then it will go like one way around this sort of central lawn area. This is a public street that comes in here. It then will go around, and then this will be a public street that'll break along the backside of the apartments and this large green open space area. And then this is public as well. And then all of this is internal circulation for the apartments, and all the areas behind the buildings is parking and internal circulation there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other questions for staff? Alderman Pinchuk?
I have a question. Are you going to be involved with the signing at all?
The signing
Yeah.
probably would be the architect.
Yeah. I'm just curious, is there going to be a larger sign on the side of the Aldi's facing Kingston Pike, or will the larger sign be on the side facing Kroger? And then, for question number one, question two is, the trees between Aldi's and Kingston Pike, what type of trees are there? Because I know we're trying to keep that open as much as possible.
Yeah, I haven't given them names yet.
Well,
The overall plan was,
Trees are we looking at?
they have to be shade trees. So, I mean, we could do something like a honey locust, which is a little more open, or,
on this plan, you called them out as a mix of red maples and alley elms.
okay.
The
Well,
maples can get pretty big.
but on the overall plan, where I'm not showing trees
Yeah,
along Kingston Pike,
okay, yeah.
we've got to have like 5 different kinds of shade trees on, I think, for the
Sure.
amount of trees we have. So, I mean, it could be something like a honey locust that's not quite so dense.
My question is, how visible are these buildings going to be from Kingston Pike if these are big trees like maples and so forth?
We're
The
just
idea is
try-
to open
Yeah.
up this.
We're just trying to meet the requirements.
I know you are. That's why I'm concerned.
Yeah.
If you meet requirements,
And-
and
and I-
the requirements going to
Well,
hide
you know,
everything.
I think Aldi would be concerned too.
I mean, they'll have to prune and thin appropriately, but, the ordinance does require them to have shade trees within a certain distance of all the parking spaces. So, this is minimum requirements.
35 years in retail, and every time we open up a new store, we have little trees planted, and then 5 years later, you can't see the store or the sign, you know? It always really frustrated me. So I'm concerned
Yeah.
about that. I understand we need the trees.
Yeah,
I'm all
yeah.
for that, but it's the
And
placement,
I
the
think,
size of
yeah, and a
them.
certain number have to be in the front yard, like 25% of the total. And there are quite a lot of trees on this site, or
Yeah.
will be.
Yeah, if you look at the overall plan, it's going to be, I mean,
Well, around the detention plaza, I have no problem, putting
Yeah.
big trees back there if we can, and hide all that, but,
Once the commercial and all that get real firmed up, and, things may shift just a little bit, and, we may be able to,
I
To
just want
rework
us
some
to work
stuff.
with them as much as we can, and us and
yeah.
you, as far as what we put where and how big they are. I'd like to hear from comments from the other board members, though.
I have a question about the loading dock, and I assume it's that kind of notch
Uh-huh.
out on the
Yeah.
right-hand side. And I also, and I don't know if they'll have dumpsters.
There are dumpsters in that dock.
Okay, and then those trees lined there are magnolias, which will get pretty big. Will they grow into that area right? I mean, that's a long line of magnolias right there.
Yeah, and I'm going for the little gem, which are going to be a little more upright and compact. And I know they can shear those things if they need to.
If they do.
Yeah. There was a concern from Planning Commission that that area would be visible to the green.
Yes, and that's my concern too, with having the commercial right up next to what's supposed to be a community area. And kind of the take down trees for business, but then for a central walking community area, you don't want those trash cans and loading docks and all of that stuff visible.
Right.
But you also don't want it to impede the pathways. We've had that with the fire zones and where are the fire zones going to be and making sure they can get through there on that
Right.
road as well. So just a thought
I've-
with those right up, I mean, it's
Yeah.
a tight area.
I've
so.
tried to show them at their projected mature widths and situate them accordingly. I mean, we could look at a different type of tree if we need to. I mean, I thought about emerald green arborvitaes but I did try to look at projected mature width and space them accordingly from the dock wall.
That dock, is it,
Yes,
it
goes
drops down, right? It's not a
Yeah.
level dock. It drops down,
Yeah.
what, 10 feet or so?
4 feet, usually
Oh,
4
that's all?
feet, yeah.
4 feet.
But that certainly is something the planning commission has grappled with, is that, given this site and the orientation of the development and the buildings on it, there's no kind of, rear of the buildings to hide things behind because they're so exposed from multiple angles. So it's just a matter of trying to, come up with the best solution for what you're talking about in terms of screening and whatnot.
Yeah, and dumpsters have been a topic of conversation in the past. so
Yeah.
Just thoughts of that. The other question that I was thinking of, I forgot it because I was listening. I'll think of it in a moment. It just completely flew out of my brain. I have no idea.
All right. Any other question other than
Not
that
right
for
now.
now? Okay.
No.
Mr. Wright, do you have anything right now?
No, I don't have any questions. I appreciate the conversation. Good points brought up, but no, I don't.
Okay. Overall, I think what is in place here for the plan is good. With the comments that have already been made, I think we've had a lot of discussions in the past about shielding residential when commercial is very close to it, to the best that we can. And of course, with lighting as well, and I don't know, that's probably been discussed somewhere along the line too, I suspect, what the lighting is going to look like around here.
Yeah, I mean, it's being discussed at the planning commission level with the developers, and again, it's such a big project that, they're having to find ways to be able to move forward with the project and still, like, bring back, elements for further review to the planning commission, and there'll be more things coming back here in terms of the landscaping, because it's a type of thing that, they just can't have it all nailed down at once, really. I mean, if you can think how long the landscaping plan would have been for the entire development, and in
Right.
some cases, they're not even sure whether, where their original plan shows two buildings could be just one building, one larger building, depending on the tenant leasing, or vice versa. So, it's they're just trying to make forward progress on the project.
Okay.
I have one last question.
Please.
Can you outline again, I know we're voting on the detention pond
You're
landscaping, but as
You're
far as
essentially
all
voting
these-
on this sheet, on sheet L1.1, and on this sheet, which is,
So the previous,
so the two detention basins, and then
only what's in red?
well, no, the red are just some additions they made to the plan. Basically, pull up
It's all those trees between Kingston Pike and Aldi's,
Yeah,
right?
it's basically this entrance area down through here, over through here and up,
Oh, all
and
of
then
that.
taking in the Aldi and then back up, because they have to build this road to come in. But now, some of the additional trees that they would normally have to put in would be up here along this frontage and over in here. But again, that's going to be under construction, so there's no reason for them to do that now. So they have a note up here in this table that calls out, I forget how many trees, it's 11 or.
10 or 11?
Yeah, 11 or 13, something like that, you know, are called for, that essentially they owe us to put elsewhere on the plan when the rest of this gets added. So they'll have to come back with landscaping for this future development area up in here, this future development area here, the streetscaping along here, and then additional development as it comes along. So essentially, you're approving the landscaping as shown on sheets L1.1 and L1.2.
Got it.
And then there'll be additional phases coming in.
Is the board feel comfortable with all those trees and what type of trees they are?
Well, I guess that is our question, right? Did you think of your other question?
I did think of my
Okay.
question. Will all of this include a maintenance plan like we talked about earlier, I assume, and requirements for maintenance on all of this? Because this is so massive that, I mean, all of this will require a large amount of upkeep. And so
Well, the elements that are on, that'll be on private property will be maintained like any other shopping center or development in town, so they'll be, same as anyone else's parking lot trees, that, the owners of the development and will be responsible for those. There will be street trees along the private thoroughfares, and honestly, I can't remember if that's been worked out yet, but there'll be maintenance agreements for all of that, I'm sure, at some point. But that's being worked out at the Board of Mayor and Alderman level and the Planning Commission level.
I think what it is some of the roads are going to be maintained by the town, and the greenways and the Great Lawn.
The green.
Yeah.
And the rest is by them.
Again, this is it's an overall development, and it incorporates the addition, what's typically a subdivision, putting in streets and streetscaping and that sort of thing, with, commercial development and multifamily development being done at the same time and being integrated into the overall design. So it's something that you're not used to looking at. Really, the town hasn't looked, is not used to looking at things like this.
And just another question, is there an overall signage plan as well? Talking about blocking views into it, you go to other areas, and for a town center like this, there's an overall sign. So you don't have to worry about, you want trees, you want shade, you want things like that. So instead of worrying about kind of how many trees we have, and so that we can meet requirements and make sure that it's a pretty nice site, is there an overall, and I know we're not to the signage, but in order to make sure that a landscaping plan looks nice, and we're not blocking signage, is there an overall sign plan as well that will come before us so that we can take that into account?
We've talked some, at the staff level and with the developers on pulling that together for the development. They're probably going to propose some ground signs for, sort of entrance markers into the larger development. This is part of the mixed-use town center, so most of the signage internal will be wall signage on the buildings and the other types of signs that are allowed in that. And, like we're doing with a lot of the new developments coming in, we'll be working with them to try to come up with a unified theme for the wall signs.
Okay, because it's something, looking at a lot of this tree foliage, I mean, we want to make sure that they are visible, so if it is wall signs, I mean, we don't want it to be completely blocked either, you know, taking it all into account. So, just before approving anything, it's like, we don't want to approve one and then come back later and be like, oh, wait a minute, you can't have any, you know, let's move out all the tall trees and,
Yeah.
so-
And again, it's, you know, it's designed to be more of a, you know, a town center concept. And so, you know, right now our frame of reference is purely Brooklawn and Kingston Pike, but there's going to be new public streets in this area that people are going to be transiting as well, you know, so that, you know, some of these commercial spaces are going to have visibility and frontage on those new streets that aren't even in yet, you know, so.
Make a motion, could we make it subject to staff working with developer, creating the right mix of trees? I mean, and there's a number involved, I understand that, but if we could somehow work this out down the road. We're kind of giving you a free check here to do, or, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, but, you know, the way the ordinance is written, a certain number of trees are going to be required in there, and they're going to
The
have to
number
be,
I'm sure we
and they're
could-
going to have to be qualifying shade trees. So,
Yeah, but we could put a lot of those back around the
well,
detention.
no, they have to be in the parking lot.
They have to be in the parking lot?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
I also think a consistency of it. So if one side of the front of the development looks completely different than the other side, and there's different varieties of trees, it's not going to look right.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, since we're going to be doing this in phases, we just want to be sure that it's a consistent plan. So for us and, you know, for them, just taking that into account, that it's consistent. And I don't know if you're working on all of it or just part of it, but.
I'm hoping
I mean,
we are,
obviously,
yes.
you know,
Yeah,
You
yeah.
would know that, but I think, you know, just kind of working on it holistically as this goes on. As we know, things change as plans go. So that's really that was my other questions, to kind of think about all of those pieces.
Yeah, the way the ordinance is written now on the trees is every parking space has to be within 100 feet of a qualifying shade tree and within 120 or 25
Something like that.
of two qualifying shade trees. So, you know, just by the dimensions of the parking lot, a certain number of the trees have to be within the parking lot. You know, if you had a very narrow, you know, skinny little parking lot, then, you know, you could probably put them more on the perimeter and achieve that, but, you know, here where you have multiple rows of parking, you know, you pretty much have to get some trees in the islands in between to get the right number. And then there's a certain number of shade trees that are just required based on the amount of, you know, surface area being put on the development. And now, and again, like some of those have to be in the front yard, you know, others can be scattered about, but just in terms of meeting all the standards, it's impractical to not have a good number of the trees in the parking lot, particularly on a large parking lot like this.
Well, I think I'm comfortable that you understand the ordinance and that you put together a plan that complies with the ordinance and that you all are making your very best effort to do the right thing all the way through. I think that I have that comfort level, and I'm comfortable with approving this based on the ordinance. That said, we've got a concern about visibility here, and you know, and the concern that you had. And so I guess the only comment I would have there is, and within all of those parameters, is there a solution? Is there a solution that allows for those shade trees to be there and the visibility to also be there as time goes by? That might be a little bit different than what's presented on this plan. Is that something you can speak to, or?
Like I said, you know, thornless honey locust are going to be a little more, or a little less opaque. It's got a lighter canopy. A more upright, fast digit tree, but that's not really providing shade.
Yeah.
And, you know, Franklin Square, for example, where they had just completely limbed up all those river birch, I think, and just made tall, skinny sticks with big, high canopies. You know, that's another option.
Man, and, you know, and the, you know, they might be able to put in a fewer trees and meet the requirement for separation, you know, from the parking spaces. Yeah, but then there's just a certain number of trees that need to go in the area anyway, so.
And they've got to be within, what, 25 feet of the impervious area? Or, I think it's 25
I
feet?
think so. I think
Yeah,
so.
so we
I'd have
can't
to go
just
back
put 'em
through
all
it.
off.
I mean, when we looked at this, it was compliant. Now, if there's another way to go about it, I guess there could be, but, we reviewed the plan based on what was submitted, and it meets the requirements. And even with this, because of some of the future development within this immediate area, they're still having to offset and put some required trees elsewhere on the site, or come back and put them in areas, that will be developed subsequently. Even what's shown on this one sheet, not even counting what the rest of the development.
Okay, so what I hear is it's going to be very difficult to do everything that we have discussed here tonight.
I mean, we
within all
can,
the
we
ordinance.
could try to get together and see if we can, move some things around, but, I mean, there's a certain amount that's gonna be required in that area, just to meet the standards, and honestly, when the buildings get put in out along Kingston Pike and along that new entrance street coming in off of Kingston Pike,
Landscape.
yeah, there'll be more
There'll be
landscaping in
more,
there
and
as
so
well.
that's gonna, yeah.
Now, part of that's gonna be along that main boulevard. The whole point there is gonna be to have some street line tree
Right,
elements, but,
All right.
well, we tried.
We try, well, all you can do is ask them to,
Just
staff
ask.
well,
to,
I mean, we
staff
can
to do
certainly
what you
sit down,
can.
and I can get together with,
Yeah.
and Mark in particular, because he's a lot more knowledgeable on landscaping than I am, and we could see whether or not there's anything we can do to thin that out a little bit. If we do, if it was a minor change, we could just deal with it in-house. If it was something major, we could bring back to y'all, and you could take another look at it. But I know that they do want, approval on at least this first phase of the landscaping, because in order to, to move forward with the project, they need to have some approvals in place, and so,
Okay.
I just want, as Brittany said, I want us to be aware of how important the signing is to the commercial businesses and to our citizens as they want to maneuver around. So as long as we're aware of that and we do everything we can to keep everything visible in front of the stores and signing, I'm fine. So I have no.
Questions from the board?
Good.
Okay. All right, well, with that, do I have a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Motion to approve by Alderman Pinchot. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Moore. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
Yes.
Your time.
Thank you.
and we can get together and look to see whether or not we can shift some things around, or thin something out, or switch a species, although we'll have to coordinate elsewhere on the project too,
Right.
so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good night. All right, so moving down to the next item on our agenda, which is the appointment of a youth representative member for our next fiscal year, starting July 21 through June 22. This was a good year in terms of we have 4 applicants, 4 good qualified applicants for our position, and tonight we have the very difficult duty of choosing between them. We also have one of our applicants here with us tonight, and so we can hear from her and ask questions. So I don't know how many times we've had 4 applicants when I've been on here, or even necessarily had someone present. So I think this is a great thing. So present tonight, if you don't mind, if you would go up to the podium there, and I want to make sure I get this right, but it's Inas
Yes, that's right.
Leilani?
Yes.
Okay. She is one of our applicants that everybody's had a chance to review in the packet. So why don't we start with, boy, this is the tough one. Why don't we start with you just to kind of tell us a little about you and what
Okay.
you want to do for the board?
Okay. My name's Ina Solani. I am about to be a rising senior at Farragut, and I want to contribute to the board just by giving insight and being able to give that insight, because it does have an impact on the culture of, or the climate of Farragut in general.
Awesome. Well, I want to open up to the board as well to have a conversation back and forth. Do you guys have any questions?
After sitting here through what we just went through, you sure you want to do this?
I am very sure.
Farragut.
I think I moved here when I was 5. I used to live in Sweetwater.
Oh, okay. So you moved to Farragut when you were 5?
No, I went to A.L. Lotz, and then I
Oh,
moved
okay.
to Farragut in 3rd grade.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So you have plans to be a physical therapist?
Yes.
And what's leading you in that path?
I think, well, I'm a dancer, and one of my coaches is a physical therapist, and to see her just take care of our teammates with our injuries, it's really inspiring.
Okay. All right. What kind of classes are you taking in high school?
I'm taking for the next year. Are you asking?
Yeah, just in general. Mhm.
Well, I'm taking like English, math, and then science, social studies, and I'm taking a couple dual enrollment classes for like injuries and related to physical therapy. And I'm also interested in like urban planning and implementing that into like, I want to be a business owner. So that's what I'm interested in.
Great.
Physical therapy. Have you played sports at Farragut?
I dance at a studio.
Okay. Okay.
Can you tell us about it says you were selected as an ambassador for the high school?
Yes, that was the Keeper Ambassador. That is about like mental health in our school. So we implement things that involve inclusiveness of all students.
Okay. And what about Project U?
That is very similar to the Keeper Ambassador, but you work on basically creating like a very positive climate, doing nice things for the students and even the surrounding schools. So we do like, we make cards for teachers and things like that.
Okay. All right. Do you have any questions for us?
I wanted to ask, and anyone can take this, but what is one of the most important lessons you have learned being on the board?
I didn't hear. Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Oh, yes. What is an important lesson you have learned being on the board?
Anybody?
Be flexible.
You learned that tonight, didn't you?
Interesting, and I really don't mean this sarcastically. One of the first thing that comes to mind is that I've learned a lot about trees, and I really don't mean that sarcastically. It's been interesting serving on the board and things that come our way, and yet you learn and you understand better what certain things do, certain landscaping, why it's meaningful, and that's been interesting for me. That's been a good takeaway so far. But it sounds silly to say, but you learn things you wouldn't expect to encounter.
I'll add to that and say, I've learned a lot since I've been on the board. But one of the things is the relationship between what we do and just the applicants that come in, and the community and the townspeople as well. And, I think we have a sense of pride of trying to put out the best product we can, which is to make good recommendations to everyone that comes in. And sometimes we don't have to make a recommendation. They really have done a great job. And so I think it's been a good experience to see that interaction, the public-private type partnership that we have going on here. And I hope that's turned out well for a lot of the people that we see, because I think there are a lot of quality signs and landscaping in this area because of what we're doing. So it's fulfilling as well.
I'll add.
too. I think for me, it's just been noticing the little things that you wouldn't necessarily pay attention to. I've lived here my entire life, and I can honestly say that I never paid attention to McDonald's signs driving around to different towns, and I take pictures when I go places of landscaping, town centers, and I never actually think that I'll go back and look at those pictures, but I have. And it's impactful when you go to a city and you see things that aren't as nice, or you drive into one and you go, oh, that's what it would look like, and you kind of hold on to those memories. So it has taught me sometimes to slow down, pay attention to the things that no one else really realizes what goes into it and how much thought is behind some things that seem so mundane to a lot of people. And it's the little things, so.
Great question. Do you have others?
What are some qualities you look for in a student representative?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I
Anybody?
think, I'll just answer.
Go ahead.
I think for me, it's somebody who's dedicated, somebody who kind of reaches outside of their normal circle and stretches to do something different, and somebody who wants to give back and is invested in this community because it is something different. It's not something that most people go, oh yes, please let me sign up for that. And so it takes just kind of a level of interest to want to do something different than what most people and it's not always the most exciting thing, and it is kind of challenging sometimes to figure out what the best, as you saw tonight in some things, there's not a clear-cut answer. So somebody who's willing to voice their opinion and step up to the plate and give their opinion regardless if it's the popular one or not.
Great. I think that's a good answer. What else?
I think that's all the questions I had for now.
All right. Well, let me ask you another question just to confirm. We do meet the fourth Tuesday of every month, just like tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to do that for the next 12 months? Are you able to make, if not all the meetings, substantially all of the meetings?
Yes.
All right. I'm sure you have a busy schedule, so we want to confirm that. What are your after-high school plans for college? You have thought about where yet?
I have a couple colleges in mind, but I'm not completely sure at the
Okay.
moment.
Okay. That's okay. All right. Does the board have any other, while we have her here, do you have any other questions for her or comments?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
That's a big step, certainly.
Anything else?
I've got nothing.
Thank you very much for coming by and taking the time to answer our questions. And you can go. We'll finish up, and obviously the town will let you know.
Okay. Thank you for
All right.
having me.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So, in addition to NOS, we also had 3 other applicants that you guys probably have in front of you, and we need to narrow those down now by some form or fashion to one. I must say that I thought she was very impressive, and I very much appreciate that she took the time tonight to come here and speak with us. It's hard to make a determination based on paper, but I will add that I did rank all of the applicants before arriving tonight, and I did rank her number 1 before I talked to her. I didn't even know she was going to be the one here. So that's just my comment. So beyond that, you guys have other comments about the other applicants and what you saw and what you prefer?
Well, I will say, I think they picked their choices. So she picked this one first, and Paulo also picked this board first. So I kind of thought maybe that, I don't know if we wanted to consider them first. And I didn't know if the other boards, because there's limited boards that take youth
Students.
representatives, right?
Yeah.
I asked earlier today, and none of these 4 have been picked for other committees. Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, and was there a chance, or did they already review for those other boards?
I think most of the other boards have already selected.
Okay.
So, There may be one board more or two boards more that are yet to go, but they're all available to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I read through and I printed about 30 pages tonight, and I left apparently a couple pages on my printer. So I can't look at them right. I read through all the applications and I saw the letters of recommendation. They were glowing.
I've got spare copies if you want them.
Well, I think my comments can be narrowed down. Similar, I ranked her high, and for me, she was here, seemed eager and excited, so that's my vote. I mean, that to me is, I think they were pretty equal caliber, and from what I read the letters of recommendation, and everything sounded very positive, but if we're to that stage yet, I'd say for me, that's really my comment. I'd go this direction first.
Yeah, the chairman had asked me to, contact all four applicants and invite them to the meeting. One of the other applicants, she had a swim meet that, that she had to be
Okay.
at. And then one I didn't hear back from, and the other was had planned to be here, but
Oh.
maybe something came up.
Okay.
So,
And I don't think we need to, the fact that someone is here or not here should not be the final determining factor, but it was nice to hear her. I mean, I thought she had some really good questions. That was awesome.
All right, my comment is, I had narrowed it down to two, Leilani and, Singh. And Leilani is the only senior. The other three are juniors. And the other three will have another opportunity next year to apply again if they want. But it was pretty close between those two, so I was kind of torn between the two. But Leilani kind of has the upper hand, in my opinion, because of her being a senior.
Agreed. Agreed. That's right. The others, one of them, was even one of them younger? Are they all juniors?
I believe all three of them.
They're
are
all,
juniors.
okay, all right. Okay. Well, I think they're all quality applicants on paper.
Yeah,
There's,
they are.
that's what makes the decision so very difficult, for sure. Any other thoughts or comments from anyone? Okay, I think, again, I did have Miss Leilani ranked first on mine, but I think at this point we need to have a formal motion of the candidate that we want to select and get a second and then have a vote. So do we have a motion for the candidate that we want to select?
So the motion is, I'll make a motion to select a candidate or one in particular?
One
One in particular.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to select Inas. Am I saying that right?
Enos,
Yes.
right? Can we have a motion to select Enos Leilani? Do we have a second on that motion? I'll second it. So we have a motion by Mr. Wright, a second by Chairman Lehman. So with that, we'll do a roll call vote.
okay, or I should say Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
and Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Okay, so
All right.
that was unanimous.
Motion carries. All right, so the only other thing which is not on our agenda, which there's been some discussion about, is that apparently the other boards have been reviewing the start time of the meeting. I know the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have moved their start time from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. I think it was in our packet that maybe Arts and Beautification, something like that, moved. Which
Either
one?
Arts or museum.
Parks
It's one of the
or
two. Yeah, I can't remember.
whichever one you wrote in our packet, Bart. I can't.
I don't.
Now that I've put it all.
I don't.
It's on one of the applications.
Someone couldn't make it.
Who was? Oh, it's Miss Singh. She changed hers because
She couldn't make
the
it.
Arts and Beautification changed the meeting time to 11:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's just, I mean, she had applied for one board and then
Right.
it wasn't available to her, so she switched to the VRRB.
Right. So I'm just making the point that the other boards are reviewing start times. Some have changed, some have not. So the Planning Commission stayed at 7 p.m. It's not our agenda to vote tonight, and I would I think it would be best to vote only when we have the full body here, but I just wanted to put it out to everyone to be thinking about that it probably is something we should put on the agenda for July, that we can review the start time, and then we'll discuss it then and see, what everyone thinks. So I don't think it's anything that we've reviewed on this board in many, many years, so. All right, is there anything else we need to know about?
Just to circle back around, I'll get with Mark and I'll try to get with Annette to see if there's anything that can be done on the landscaping for that, that front part of Aldi there. I mean, the ordinance, like I said, it does require a certain number of shade trees per impervious surface, or improved surfaces being put in. They have to be located within a certain distance of those, and so, even if they take some out of the parking lot, they're going to end up having to put them up in the front yard or within 50 feet of those surfaces. So you could get a cluster in a place that then blocks it. There's a provision in there too where you can do some substitution, like understory trees for shade trees, but only 20%, and only in certain circumstances. So, there might be something they can do to maybe create some like sight lines, maybe. I don't think they're going to be able to just eliminate them, but maybe if there's certain angles that, they could get a sight line on. I mean, I'm not a designer, so it's difficult for me to know how that would look.
My years of experience, when I saw a new center being built, and then some trees going in, I thought, boy, that's nice. But then 5-10 years down the road, some of those trees got so big they blocked the front of the stores, and people finally stopped in the center and said, I didn't know this store was in here. I go by it every day and so forth. So, we just need to be aware of that. I mean, we're talking about how important our retail business, our commercial businesses are. I'm all for the trees. I'm not saying cut them out. I'm just saying maybe we put some smaller ones, or where we put them is so critical to possibly a business. And I don't want to see somebody go out of business because nobody can see their sign.
Good point. Okay, well, with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
These meetings usually don't go this long. It's a good one.
Did you know that, Brittany?
I heard, just, do we know why? Do we know what's going on, just general?
I don't. Do you know any more about
What,
Jeannie's husband?
He has some sort of,
say what was going on?
one time she was telling me and Cindy, Hollyfield, and Cindy knew what, I want to say it's some sort of Parkinson's related dementia or some such thing, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Do you know what's up with Jeannie Stowe's husband? He's got some sort of, is it like Parkinson's related dementia?
Parkinson's and dark dementia. I thought he had
Some
both.
sort of thing there.
Yes. And he's been in the hospital, and they took him to NHC today with hospice, seeing him with hospice, they said. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when
She said something about if anybody wanted to come sit with him. Is that what she said?
something like that, but when she emailed me last week and said I could pass it on to you all,
He's gonna be replacing.
her original email is they had her son and his family
Yeah.
was flying in from California. So I assume that was not a good thing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let us know if, something
Yeah,
yeah.
changes, so. Appreciate the updates.
Have a good.
All right, have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. I'll talk to y'all.
I had the,
I'm like, have we passed a year?
I had to go run back there and change it.
Should I just turn this bad boy off or
I would log it out.
log off? Then leave it, just let it run? Or
No, you can go ahead and shut it down. He can drink his water.
Windows will
Wow, I don't know
read
if I
and
can
scan
do
this
that
list
now.
automatically. Press the space bar to select the highlighted option.
It's not
Cancel.
giving me an option to turn the bloody. It was talking. I'm telling you.
Make your computer easier to use. Windows will read, cancel.
I don't want you. I just want to turn off, but it's not letting me.
Make your computer cancel.
I'm telling you. I'd have to log back in, I think.
Yeah, but then, yeah.
Where's the Windows security button? What's this? It hates me.
You Control Alt Delete and see if it'll give you the option to
Shut down.
switch.
Oh,
No, it
oh,
doesn't.
oh, over here. Yeah, look, it's red. Boom.
Okay.
Yeah, that meeting went forever. What the hell did they do?
That's what I was saying.
It's like that. They were all basically
I had to
approved.
go and-
Approved.
I had to go and change the video because I had it to cut off at 8:30.
Oh,
So I had to bumped it to 9.
what time is it?
It's 15 till.
Good Lord, that was crazy. They never go that long. We don't have to set the alarm, right?
No,
John will be here? Okay.
Well, he'll be back. He's over at Public Works, but he'll come here and clean
Yeah,
after
they
he
just,
gets over.
they were chatting. I don't know what the deal was.
No.
We couldn't decide about the, well, they got all wrapped up in the HOA stuff, and I was like, they're pretty simple signs. The planning commission dealt with them in like,
That was 2 seconds.
they're like, yeah, okay, that looks good, go. I think sometimes they're not used to be able to do business, they used to be able